Hi, welcome to the Semantics lecturelet about pronoun reference. We've seen pronouns, and we know that they work by replacing referring expressions. And what we want to understand then for our formal semantics is how the pronoun actually does that. How does it refer? And it's going to require a couple of new steps that are going to require us to tweak our semantics in pretty important ways. But we'll see that it works out in a straightforward fashion, but we just have to keep in mind of a couple of new things. So take a sentence like number one, Tom chased him. Right? Tom picks out, has a meaning that's specified in the lexicon. It picks out Tom, or the property of being Tom, and then the hidden determiner will get you the rest. But then him, right, is not specified in the lexicon. That just depends on the context and how we are linking that word to some entity. And this becomes even more clear when we have a sentence like two, he chased him, where we have two distinct entities, but we use a pronoun for each. And typically, in the syntax, we would add an index to help disambiguate these, so that we would be able to tell. When, which one is referring to which. But let's suppose that these indices weren't just placeholders, but were actually part of the syntactic representation. So if you look at the tree in 3, we see that the indices are present in the syntax. And if they're present in the syntax, then we want to see if they have meaning in the semantics. And that's where the assignment function will come in handy. Because now we can use the assignment function to link the pronoun to its referent by mapping the index to an entity. So let's call our assignment A for these purposes, and you can see it in 4. A maps 1 to Luke and 2 to Owen. And so we can replace the sentence if we're using assignment A as A of 1, so Luke chased A of 2, in this case Owen. And that's what we get under assignment A. So far so good. But building that structure is not so easy. And the reason, even once we have the syntax, the reason is because we can't use the terminal nodes rule. Called the terminal nodes rule indicates that if alpha is a terminal node, alpha's denotation is specified in the lexicon. Well, that works for a name like Tom. But it doesn't work for a pronoun because their meaning is not specified in the lexicon. Right? That's the whole point of the pronoun. So we have to use some other mechanism. And that mechanism will need to involve the assignment function, because that's where the meaning comes from. And to see what we mean, let's try a different assignment. Let's say we used assignment B, which maps 1 to Ed and 2 to Ahmed. In that case, the same sentence will have different meaning. It will not mean Luke chased Owen, it will mean Ed chased Ahmed. Even though the syntax is the same and everything else is the same. What's changed is the assignment. So the assignment is crucial for determining what the reference of a pronoun is. When an expression has a meaning that depends on an assignment, then we will call that a variable, and we can define it exactly like that. And we'll use the term variable assignment to describe the sorts of assignments that we'll be using that involve these kinds of expressions. Now, how do we express an assignment? Well, the way that we do it is by taking a denotation and adding the superscript index. So in this case, if we're using assignment A, we'll put A. If we're using assignment B, we'll put B, and so forth. And we can use whatever name we want. Let's use A. So what we say is that this is he sub 2, the meaning of he sub 2 with respect to A, or the meaning of he sub 2 under A. So we get these different meanings. So what we need then is a way of getting from this to this. Right? Well, how do we do that? A rule of interpretation. And we call that rule the pronoun rule. And it's listed here. Now if alpha bears an index, or if alpha is a pronoun, and A is a variable assignment, and I, the index, is in the domain of alpha, then alpha sub I with respect to A equals A of I. So essentially we've written a link between this and this. And what it says then is that, right, the meaning is just whatever this assignment does to this number. Okay, so how does that work in the actual structure? Well, let's employ assignment A, and then we'll look at 10, where we get the structure that we see there, where we have just the verb phrase, chased him. And you notice that him will have these superscripts A's, because the meaning of him only makes sense when this is an assignment. Chased doesn't, because it's a terminal node. It has a meaning that's specified in the lexicon, and we don't need an assignment for it. But chased him will. Chased him will need to have an assignment. So if we want to build this sentence, and we want the sentence to map the pronoun to the same entity that the word does, then we'll have to have rules that account for that. Okay. So, what we have then, we want to insert him in this case. So if we want to insert him, we have to use the pronoun rule. And, but we also have to redefine our terminal nodes rule. And the reason is because pronouns are terminal nodes. They're at the bottom of their tree, and they are syntactic heads. So they cannot, that rule doesn't apply to them. So we have to divide the terminal nodes rule. We've devised a pronoun rule, and the rule that will go for non-variables or constants will be called lexical terminals. And it's going to be the same rule as before. It's just that now it will only apply to things that are not variables. Now, we can use the lexical terminal rule to insert the verb. We see that in 11. And now we get the structure in 12. Well, we've got the D node, this is the determiner, and we need to understand its DP. Well, we've used the non-branching nodes rule. But the non-branching nodes rule needs to account for the assignment. So we have to tweak it. So we can do that pretty easily, and we see that here. If alpha is a non-branching node and beta is its daughter, then for any assignment A, alpha under A equals beta under A. So in that sense, we've kept the spirit of non-branching nodes. Right? The meaning of the daughter is the meaning of the mother, and it's just that whatever assignment we pick, that's going to be carried up as well. So nothing has really changed significantly. We get our meaning in 13, and now we can compose those with functional application. Now, how is that going to work, right? So we'll have to tweak functional application as well, because we want the output to have this index. So look at the definition that we changed it to. All we've done is add the assignments. So if alpha is a branching node, beta and gamma are its daughters, then for any assignment A, if beta of A, if beta under A, is a function whose domain contains gamma under A, then the meaning of alpha under A will be beta under A applied to gamma under A. And now, this rule is exactly the same. It hasn't really changed. And in our composition, it's not really going to do much of a difference. But it does have a little interesting point here. That the way that it's defined, it applies an assignment to chaste. Right? Because chaste is a function that says chaste under A will be applied to him under A. And that's actually not a problem. Chaste is a constant, and as a constant, it means the same thing no matter what the assignment is. So there's no harm in just slapping this assignment on it. No problem. So far, so good. In that case, then, we just compose these, and basically, we've done all this tweaking. Nothing has actually changed in the composition process. So where the confusion lies is in the concepts underlying it and in the way that we generate the truth conditions. So him of A2 equals this. Chaste under A is going to mean chaste. And so you combine those and you're going to get what you would get if you had a constant instead of a pronoun as the object. That's it. The only thing that the assignment does is tell us which variable we're going to use here. Right? If we had used assignment B, this would be B, and so forth. Right. So in that case, that's it. That's how we do pronouns. Right? So we added the assignments. And when we add the assignments, we had to tweak our composition rules, our interpretation rules, in order to add pronouns, and then in order to combine pronouns. Now, I haven't mentioned predicate modification, but we'll have to tweak it too. And we'll put that here on the screen. But the idea is simply that we're adding this concept of assignment, and we're adding the concept that our interpretation is made with respect to an assignment. For pronouns, the pronoun rule applies, and the meaning will change based on the assignment. For constants, it won't. And what we'll set aside is the question of how the assignment gets chosen. So, I said, these end up having different meanings because in assignment A, 1 and 2 point to Luke and Owen, and in B, 1 and 2 point to Ed and Ahmed. Now, strictly speaking, we could have just added A3 and A4, right? And we could have kept adding forever. One of the issues that comes up in the semantics of the discourse is the exploring the kinds of limits to assignments, or whatever corresponds to assignments, in the discourse. And a lot of attention is paid to trying to figure out how we resolve these issues, right? So if we say he chased him, how come we know to stick on the same assignment or not, and so forth. And those are issues we'll set aside because right now we're just focused on how we get a referent at all and how that referent is added to the semantic structure. So that's the pronoun. That's the reference of a pronoun. All the other issues about pronouns, we'll get to some of them, or most of them, maybe all of them, eventually. But right now we're just focused on reference, and with reference, all that really matters is the assignment and the index. You notice this part, we didn't talk about it at all. That's going to come in another lecturette because it is a separate feature of the meaning of these pronouns. But for now, we got reference, and we can build our semantic structures and go from there.